Hey everybody, it's Tim Sackett and you're back with another edition of SmashUps, the video podcast where we talk about recruitment marketing, HR stuff, recruiting stuff, pretty much anything I decide to do because our great sponsor, SmashFly.com, allows me to do that. Check them out. They're the top best recruiting, remarketing platform on the planet. I'll say in the world, right? Because I don't think there's other recruitment marketing platforms outside of the globe here. I'm really excited to bring on for the first time guest to SmashUps, Mary Faulkner. She is the director of HR from Denver Water. She's also the author of Surviving Leadership. She's the co-host and founder of Disrupt HR Denver. Not really Disrupt HR. Obviously, Jen, our friend, was the founder. But I do Disrupt HR Detroit. You do Disrupt HR Denver. Like we all have these little kind of cool things that we do from time to time. And so, Mary, welcome to the video pod here.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
All the way from Denver. I got you up early before your workday started.
Well, actually, I was at work at 7:15 today, so that's my typical day. We work hard here in Denver. I don't know what you do over there in Michigan, but
9:30, 10, just kind of strolling.
We're rolling around noon.
Yeah. Try to get in before lunch, So
well, there you go. Right, because then you got to take lunch. You don't want to miss that.
Exactly. That's what happens in a heavily union environment. We just kind of do our thing.
There you go.
So I brought Mary on because I wrote a post this week, and it was all about the Charlottesville, Virginia tragedy, right, with the white supremacy march. Heather Heyer got killed tragically, but there's a lot of fallout that happened from an HR standpoint that I think I was interested in, and then you commented on, and it was all about this Cole White, who was one of the guys who was kind of marching with the white supremacy folks. Somebody took the picture, put it online, and then the Twitters took over, right? They found out who these people were, they found out where they worked, and then they said like, hey, if you don't fire this person, like we're never gonna support your business again. Well, ironically, where this guy worked was in California. He was all the way in Virginia, and he worked for a hot dog place called Top Dog LLC. In the Top Dog LLC, boy, they wasted no time. They fired his butt directly because they need to sell hot dogs. They don't need to deal with white supremacy.
That's right.
So it brought up this great thing, which is do you just go and fire your white supremacist employees? Like if you know they're white supremacists, but someone sent you a picture and said, hey, Cody, or Cole or whatever the hell his name is, who cares, was this white supremacy march, and you should fire him because he believes in bad stuff and is really supporting kind of terrorism at a high level. And you brought up the comment, well, hey, yeah, for some states that works really great, like California, but in Colorado, can't do that. So if this guy was working for you at Denver Water or at any other establishment in Colorado, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so the law it's an interesting law, and it's not that old, and I can't remember when exactly it was enacted, but the law basically states you cannot be fired for non-work activities as long as they're legal. Now, the thing to keep in mind is that there are a couple of exceptions. So one of the exceptions is if it's a bona fide job qualification and it gets you in trouble. So let's say you are a public spokesperson for an organization and you go and do this. Well, clearly that's part of your job, and now you are being seen as speaking for that organization. That's part of your job, and we can fire you for that. And then the other piece is a conflict of interest piece. So if you are out there doing something that's legal, but it's completely detrimental to your business, supporting a competitor or something like that, you might be able to do it. But the exception rules come up in the courts a few times. Yeah. So a big one that happened in Colorado was at Dish Network, where I also used to work, where we had fired an employee because in a random drug test, he came out positive for marijuana. Yeah. And medical marijuana at the time was legal in Colorado. We had made a decision as an organization, though, to follow the federal laws because we had employees across the United States, and it was we're just going to do the same thing across the board. And this is back in like 2007 or something like that. And
this is back before every Colorado employee could show up high as a kite.
Exactly, right. Well, safety sensitive, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But so that became a big thing of could a company make those decisions? So the court actually upheld Dish Network's decision, saying you have the right to decide if an employee can or cannot do that. So we'll see these come up in the court more and often. So in this particular situation, it would be tough because we are a public entity. Our employees are the face of our organization. We have in our code of ethics that you have a duty of public service. You have the duty to present Denver Water correctly. But we do tend to be surprisingly liberal in how we approach what people do on their off time. So I think it would be let's sit down and discuss what's the impact. Who is this person? How likely is it that this would impact us? And then have that discussion.
Well, we know that there's like federal government rules and regulations around this clearly, because depending on, what administration gets put in, you can't fire somebody over their political views. Now, for me, this is where the issue becomes in play, is because when does hate speech, right? White supremacy, hate speech, these marches clearly were that. When does that become non-political? Because you could sit there. I think a lot of people are trying to. A lot of the people on the white supremacy side try to argue that, hey, this is a political issue. You can't fire us for this. We have free speech. Blah blah blah. The reality is when you're talking about wanting other people to be killed and you're killing other people, that's no longer political, right? That's now become terrorism. And so I keep thinking like the courts ultimately the courts are going to decide this, but. It's completely insane. Like when does that switch flip where this becomes hate speech and now you're saying, hey, we're firing you because other employees are scared of you?
Right. So I think, again, it kind of depends on, is it in the office? That's part of it too, because most white supremacists, they're against a number of protected classes. So it's not like they're just going around saying we don't like anybody. Oh yeah. They're very targeting a specific group. So I think you could get rid of them on that grounds. It's going to be around harassment. It's going to be around the fear piece of it, and read your First Amendment rights. You have the right to say it, but doesn't mean you have the right to be protected. I mean, there's certain things that you can and can't do. Now, the federal government can't necessarily arrest you for having freedom of speech, but a company certainly can. We can set our own policies. We can decide what's acceptable and not acceptable within the workplace, and I think it's just there's such a fine line, though, because what if you work in an organization that's incredibly conservative, like Catholic Health Initiatives, huge organization in Colorado, big employer. They have very specific policies around what you can and cannot do. They ask you flat out, are you Catholic? Do you have a problem working for a faith-based organization? Yeah. And which is a little creepy.
Are you gay? We only allow our priests to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, not actively practicing.
Yes, exactly.
But those are things, it kind of depends on what organization you're in. It's not just white supremacists, which, could be abhorrent and that sort of thing, but it could be in that organization. If you support gay marriage, you're not welcome here. So each organization kind of has a right, but I'm with you, man. If you're out there inciting people to kill other people, that's not cool. Get rid of that guy. I'm sorry.
Well, and I think, and then deal with the legal fallout afterwards, right? I would rather be in that courtroom saying, "Hey, we did this to protect our own employees, and if we're wrong and we have to pay for it, then we will." But I am not going to sit back and have people come to work going, "I got to sit next to that freak show that is basically online saying they want to kill somebody like me, and I'm sitting next to them." Like that's not going to happen in my work environment. So that's one of the issues that comes up is what would you advise like other HR professionals, especially within Colorado, when those employees come to them and you have a Jewish employee or a black employee or someone that comes and says, "Hey, I just saw Jimmy over here, doing this stuff on the weekend. I no longer feel comfortable." Like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, for us it's hard because we do have to. We have that line, like we kind of can't go and investigate what they do on their weekend and in their private time. If it comes out and it's reported publicly, we might be able to kind of look at it and say, okay, what could this be? But Johnny comes in and says, I don't like Tom anymore because he said this over the weekend. And it's like, okay, don't talk to Tom on the weekends anymore. It's what's the behavior at work? But the thing I tell a lot of HR people is somebody who's that extreme in their private lives, there's no way they're going to lock that down 24/7.
No,
they're going to do it at work.
Yeah.
They're going to be a jerk at work. They're going to say something at work.
Find it, you're going to be document it, get rid of them, right?
Absolutely. Don't tolerate it. I mean, if you know that this person has these problems, don't excuse the behavior. And that's what you see too much is like, you're just like, oh, they didn't understand or oh, they didn't mean it. And by the time you get to the point where like, oh God, this guy's really a jerk.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't document any of it.
You know, he was our top salesperson the last 3 years, so
exactly.
he can hate black people. Like, no, not really. You know,
Bill's just being Bill.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh my God, I hate that. Yeah. The hard part of that is you've all had to have that conversation with like a CEO that's like, look, we cannot, like this person's right now is running our whole infrastructure and IT, like we can't lose them. And you're like, oh, like, yeah, we have to, but I understand.
Yeah.
So obviously one of the aspects of your job currently is running all of talent acquisition. So there's a whole recruitment marketing issue to this as well.
Yeah.
The Top Dog folks saw it with Cole White, which is not only were they going to lose business, but nobody wanted to come to work for them if they're going to have this guy work there. So again, one of those other kind of immediate things that happen, like what do you do? Like if you couldn't, let's say you couldn't, like you right? Like you have a Cole White working for you, you can't fire them, and yet this is out publicly. How do you address that from a recruitment marketing standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things
you can't come out and put on your website like, "Hey, we don't employ racists." You know, you do.
Yeah, really, we try to minimize the racists. No, I mean, the smartest. So I want to say one thing about Top Dog. So they're known for being pretty like they're like that kind of crunchy group, right? Some groups call them libertarian or whatever it might be, but they're very sort of, hey, you do you, but they don't want to go that route. So they have a brand for which this activity was very anti them. That, I mean, it was kind of a no-brainer for them to come out and say, hell no, we don't want you. Yeah. Plus, he's making hot dogs. I mean, it's pretty low level.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
We can't find another person.
Hot dog guy. But, like, for me, if it were me and I was running, whether it's Denver Water or a giant organization, you put out a statement. It's like, listen, we respect the right of our employees to have their own views off work time, but it does not reflect the values that we have. We will have a strong conversation with this person to remind them of what the expectations are. And then you set up some hiring to try to screen that stuff out.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do it. It's really tough because, so we have a lot of hunters who work here. You know, September's kind of empty here because people are going up to the
Colorado is meat eaters. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You know, you go. And so they like to talk about that. They like to hang out. And so one of the questions everybody always likes to ask in interviews that we say, please don't, is what are your hobbies? And we're like, don't, because if it's your hobby, great. And you love it and you have something to talk about because it gets really awkward and you're trying to establish a relationship. But let's say their hobby is, I like to go march on Washington.
Yeah. To support whatever, right? Yeah. Who cares?
What do you do? What do you do? You're like, I protest professionally. I mean, what do you do with that? So you gotta be careful. But I mean, just from a branding perspective, I would just really double down on here's what we look for. Here's what we hold people accountable for at the workplace. And if this ever happened at work, we would protect you. That's all you can really do. Yeah,
it can be catastrophic to your brand. Like you really have to kind of, I think, plan out and spend money. Because if you have the media, especially local media, working against you, saying, "Oh my gosh, this," and your name's always tied to it, like Top Dog and Cole White, you have to be able to go out and say, "Hey, we're going to spend money. We're going to get a PR firm." Like we have to change the narrative because perception becomes reality with candidates. And so, if the perception is you're a racist organization, you're never going to beat that. But if you get on it quickly and you turn that around and you show other stories and you show all this other stuff that's going on that has nothing to do with that, you can change that narrative pretty quick. I mean, America loves a redemption story. So we love that. So an organization picking itself up. All of us can't wait for Tiger Woods to be great again, right? Even though he's
come on, Tiger.
Yeah. You know, we just want, oh my gosh, we want Nike to have the commercial, right? Like, oh, he's back. You know, he changed himself. Like, we can't wait for that. But it's kind of what we are. So, anything else that you want to add to the subject?
I think a lot of it is just in the workplace, set expectations. The biggest thing that you can really do, though, is teach people to talk to each other. I mean, there are the extremists in your workforce, and they'll not listen. But I would say like 95% of misunderstandings is just lack of awareness, kind of a lack of professionalism and kind of professional maturity and understanding what they're actually saying to their coworkers. Yeah. So teach people to talk to each other. And if I'm sitting there and I'm listening to somebody saying something I find offensive, teach them to respectfully say, hey, that's not cool. I don't want to hear that. And then they'll drop it, hopefully, you know. And so just kind of build that healthy conflict culture within your organization.
Yeah, I find most time when I run into a racist, they were raised that way, right? And so there's true fear there. They don't know anything different. When you're a child and you're told that these people are wrong, they're going to try to kill you and they're going to try to do this stuff, and it's we take a look at this and we see it in other populations across the world that hate America. It's the same thing. Those kids are raised to understand America's trying to kill you, and if you think that's the case, well, you're gonna grow up with this really bad view of what's really going on, especially if you can't educate yourself enough for it. That was one of the last things on my blog that I put. I still believe if you have a white supremacist on your staff, you fire them, right? You get rid of them. But there's another piece of the population that will say, wait a minute, don't do that, because then you're just throwing them out into the wild again with more hate, right? Now I lost my job because of blah, blah, blah. Versus bringing them in and saying, hey, how do we educate them? How do we help them understand that these people do support you and help you and can be a part of it? We can all be part of one community. It's a tough topic, boy. It is, and it's just gonna continue, I think, under this administration to be a really hot topic with HR pros around the world, or at least around the U.S. for sure. And so, we'll have to figure out how to deal with it. But I want to thank you for coming on and talking about it. It's a hot topic. I think it's something that we're all going to have to deal with. So I really appreciate your viewpoints on it.
Thanks, Tim. I really enjoyed being on it.
Cool. And that's everybody. This is it. Again, check out SmashFly, smashfly.com. We love them. Thanks for the Fistful of Talent, folks, for allowing us to do this. We are out, and we will see you next time.